Hey, how are you? The title of this video, if I didn't mess it up, it's something like uh, Switzerland proves that you can have your cake and eat it too, or a variation of that. And why do I say that? I'm talking here specifically about how if you really know what you want as a government and as a country, you can have what you like and you can have a diplomatic alliances in a way that favors you across the board and not limited with as little compromises as possible. And Switzerland is an example here, but I'm talking specifically about the non-EU countries that still have a lot of EU benefits. So Switzerland, Norway, and Iceland would be the three most obvious ones, though Liechtenstein also has it, Andorra to a lesser extent. Those weird, normally smaller nations, I guess Switzerland is by far the biggest one of those because it's nearly 10 million in population, whereas all others are half that or much less than half that. But um, yeah, let's talk about the EU now, because you're gonna understand what I mean. The EU is a bunch of different treaties and ideas that are kind of mingled together, right? Generally, you could separate it in four things. It's the free trade that you have between its members. Then, secondly, there's the custom unions that comes as a natural as a natural. So there's a free trade. That's the first thing that happens between its members. Then, secondly, there's a customs union that kind of follows this free trade, where they have the exact same tariffs and taxes on outside goods for all of the countries within the bloc. Third, which is the most revolutionary out of those almost definitely, is the shared one single market economy, in which labor is shared and there's free movement of labor, capital, goods, and people. So that is definitely a very interesting approach, and it has afforded the EU and European countries in general many benefits. And last but not least, there's the monetary and political union that is well, it shows itself in the one currency, the euro, even though there's a bunch of exceptions to countries that don't use the euro. And more than that, the political and regulatory frame that Brussels represents. So the EU is all four of those things, and it's like a little building block where one thing was put on top of the other, in which now it's hard to see one without the other. But those countries I mentioned in the start of the video, especially Switzerland, let's talk specifically about it. They've uh, for many reasons, some cultural reasons, of course, the fact that they're a little bit different, but also economic reasons, the fact that they're very prosperous and they have a higher bargaining power because they're so rich. But they decided to pick and choose from those building blocks what actually served them and what didn't serve them. And what we came up with after all this is Switzerland is part of the free trade agreement in Europe. So, of course, it benefits economically from the free trade within the bloc. And it's also part of especially the four freedoms. Swiss people can work anywhere in the EU, they can live anywhere in the EU, and vice versa. It's part of Schengen as well, so there's no border control, and so it's also part of this uh, third, let's call brick. But it kind of got off the hook with the second and the fourth bricks. That is, it doesn't have a custom union with the EU. It has its own custom rules. And it also doesn't have a monetary and political union with the EU, which means, first of all, it doesn't use the euro. And then second of all, which is probably even more relevant, it doesn't have necessarily to apply and to comply with every single regulation that comes out of Brussels. Now, that doesn't mean that there isn't a pressure from the EU, a much bigger organization, for Switzerland to follow at least some, if not most, of the regulations. But it's not a rule off the bat. Like it's not necessarily are the rules in the EU meant to be applied in Switzerland. There's exceptions to that and all that, which is well, for the Swiss people, it's a good thing. In my opinion, it's also a good thing. Uh, and this generates some very interesting scenarios where Switzerland is pretty much more expensive than every other country in Europe across the board. Food is more expensive, labor is more expensive, wages are higher, but it's sometimes worth it for Europeans to go to Switzerland to buy electronics, for example, so cameras, phones, that kind of thing, because of the lower tariffs that Switzerland actually applies to foreign goods. And the tariffs have to be a lot lower because well, let's say you go to a shop in Switzerland to buy a camera. Uh, the guy selling you the camera is being paid more. The guy who owns the shop needs to take more profit. Everything like the electricity, the all the infrastructure is more expensive. And still, just because Switzerland has less tariffs, it's still worth it to go there and buy the camera there, and it's going to be cheaper than Germany or France or Italy. So it's a significant difference. And then of course, there's the currency difference. So Switzerland really did manage to eat its cake, but still have it, or have the cake and eat it too, because uh, it has the best aspects of the European Union, and very few of the bad aspects of the European Union. For example, the euro kind of ties countries together in a way where Greece and Italy are fundamentally intertwined with Germany and France and I don't know, uh, Spain in a way that's kind of like makes them hard to move economically, and it creates an economy that's a little bit too big to fail, where it's like, okay, this country you really can't go down because we share a currency together. And Switzerland opted out of that, and it's been doing pretty well for them. I mean, the franc keeps appreciating in value, and that's obviously a good thing for the Swiss, for most of the Swiss, because they have more purchasing power abroad. Products from abroad end up being cheaper to them on the same wage, which is obviously good for them. There's, like I said, the cheaper prices on some imported goods because of the lower customs, and there's still the limited, endless regulation that you see in other EU countries. So if you're in Italy, if you're in France, you have to literally comply with everything that comes out of Belgium. Uh, Whereas in Switzerland, it's not necessarily that. So Switzerland does pay for that privilege somewhat. They have to pay into the EU budget, even though they don't get to choose where the EU budget goes because they're not part of the EU. And they also have to comply with many EU regulations, but not all of them. But it's a much more sound one by one decision making than just going all in or all out. And I think if the UK before Brexit had done something similar to Switzerland, I'm not sure that it could because it didn't have that much leverage. It definitely doesn't have that leverage now. But even then, it wasn't as rich as Switzerland ever was. So there's that problem. But if you talk to British people now, uh, at least British people traveling, and I've talked to a lot of them, uh, pretty much, well, because they're traveling, almost all of them are going to be like, things got harder after Brexit and the UK is a shithole. Like, that's what we're going to say. And when you ask them, well, what don't you like? Well, the obvious answers are going to be, oh, I can't travel freely anymore. I can't live here anymore. I can't work here anymore. And that's all true. But those are all things that you could have gotten without actually staying in the EU. And the proof of that is Switzerland did, and Norway did, and Iceland did, and Liechtenstein did. Actually, Liechtenstein did something that it's hard to believe, where literally it has all the rights of other EU countries in terms of freedom of movement and all that, but EU citizens actually cannot move freely into Liechtenstein. So literally, like it's a one-way stream, and that's the only country in all of Europe where that happens, where their citizens can move into the EU freely, but EU citizens cannot move into the country freely. And obviously, it's a special situation. It's a very small country. There's reason for that, but it's still quite surprising to say the least. Um, but yeah, when you talk to British people, most of them are gonna be saying, "Well, we lost the free trade of Europe. That's bad economically, and we lost the free travel, the free uh, uh, movement of labor, movement of goods, and all that, and that's also bad. But very few British people are like, damn, I wish it still had a custom union, you know? If only we were charging more for outside products and our products were more expensive, that would solve everything. Like I don't think I've ever heard an English person say that, and I've also never heard them say that. Oh, damn! If only we had adopted euro instead, you know? Because well, while the pound is going down, it's still stronger than the euro, and at least they're not tied to the future of all of Europe in the same way as euro currency using countries are. So there's that as well. And I feel like it would be interesting for the EU to consider having more of a Switzerland, Norway, Iceland type of approach where each country not picks and chooses. There's obviously compromises, but where the level of integration can vary a little bit more, depending on what each country's population is like. Because this Switzerland being part of the single market, for example, is something that Swiss people want to because they voted for it, and it's something that benefits the EU as well. So, giving this middle ground approach benefits both parties in a way, and it might be a solution to other countries that might be considering pulling out of the EU entirely. Like, okay, what is it that you don't like? What is it that what part of this cake do you not want? And what part do you absolutely have to keep? And I think that might be a interesting way moving forwards. Of course, some people that for further integration in the EU would just say, uh, yeah, let's keep it as it is for some countries, and then for countries that really want to integrate, let's integrate even more. And I have my doubts about that, but if you're going to do that, at least do the opposite as well. Like there's some countries where clearly most people agree we've gone too far. We've handed over too many powers. Let's get some of them back. Not all of them. Like I'm not saying I don't want people to be able to move freely. I'm not saying I want to get out of Schengen. I'm not saying I want to, or maybe I am saying I want to get out of Schengen, but I still want to remain in the EU, like Ireland, for example, did. So try to trying to find a compromise between so many countries might be easier if you actually like them, if you actually let them choose what they want to be integrated in and choose what they want to be independent in. And that's how Europe might actually improve its situation a little bit and get out of this constant constraint between more integration, less integration. Maybe Germany, France, they want more integration because they have more of a say. They're bigger countries and they can influence other countries a little bit easier, right? Where smaller countries might feel unheard. Italy or Portugal, or the support for the EU in Portugal is pretty high, but Italy, Poland, even the Nordics at one point or another, they might be like, whoa, 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 you're controlling way too many parts of my life, and I'm not okay with that. And honestly, I feel it. I get it. And the way moving forward might be to have a more Switzerland-minded approach to what the EU is right now. So, uh, yeah, this is just a reflection. Hope you liked it. Comment below, and I'll see you around.